most important panels, I think, and that's branding in the marketplace. And who could have imagined 20 years ago would we be sitting at a panel talking about branding of a plant that grows and makes us feel better. Honored today to be sitting with three terrific folks with a wide range of experience. The first person we have is David Letrow. He is a marketing communications expert at Trulieve Healthcare, which is continuously evolving, and in return, engagement strategies needed as well. Trulieve is strengthening the links between healthcare, society, and technology, achieved by evaluating the links, identifying growth potential, analyzing weaknesses, and adding innovation to generate value with actionable strategies. We have Sara Brittany Somerset. She's a partner at Greenbox Robotics. Sara's been in the industry for well over 10 years and has an extraordinary knowledge of the cannabis industry with a background in multimedia journalism, writing, photography, and videography, and animation, content strategy, and public relations. And finally, we have Judy Ferrick, the Director of Product Marketing at AltMed Florida, MUV. Plants of Ruskin and AltMed Enterprises joined resources to form AltMed Florida recently to serve Florida patients in their home state. Together they bring an unparalleled track record of expertise to serve patients. Plants of Ruskin has been an agribusiness leader in the state for nearly 100 years and has deep roots in the community and has exhibited a continued commitment to support plant science, education, and research. AltMed, also a Florida company, brings pharma industry precision to the production and distribution of medical cannabis and products under the Move MUV brand. The Move brand is driven by research and development and has received national and international interest for its quality, consistency, and safety. Thank you all for joining me today and us. Let's start with a broad macro level. When you guys are home at night and thinking about, my God, I'm in the branding business of cannabis, could you ever have imagined being there? Let's take a few minutes to talk about your personal journey, how you got there, and what a day in your life is like in the branding of an agricultural commodity. Sara, why don't you start us off?
Well, I always knew that I would be in the brand space, but I didn't necessarily know at the time I would be in cannabis, because at the time that I was at university, cannabis wasn't legal like it is now. But I got my background in graphic design, digital design, and interactive media. So we were always working with brands, but really major ones like Coca-Cola, L'Oreal. So I'm able to apply that experience to the cannabis space. And one thing that I often tell people when they ask me how to get into the space is just apply your current skill set to the cannabis sector. That's just the easiest way to make the transition. So I had a fair idea that I'd be working in the brand space, and I really enjoy it.
Fantastic, thank you. Judy?
I've also been working with brands. Right out of college, I started off with Ford Motor Company, so that taught me a great deal about reputation and consistency and reliability. So it just kind of did, as you said, it translated to the cannabis industry, and I was lucky to start with a company that already had an established brand that really is symbolic of who they are. They're simple as far as messaging because it's a confusing space. So I think that I'm most proud of the fact that we're innovators and research and developers, and that's the most important message that we try to get out there with our brand. That everybody knows cannabis, but we're trying to explain cannabis as medicine. Hopefully doing a good job of it.
You are, thank you. And David, your role with Trulieve, you had some experience before that. Let's talk about, could you have imagined now being a branding officer for cannabis?
Thanks, Mike. No, never saw this journey. My background is marketing in more of a broad spectrum, not just from a brand perspective, so also including the communications component behind it. Being in the healthcare space for over 15 years, coming from a hospital environment, physician environment, and cannabis is still a taboo topic and a struggle. So it's that constant education that we're always dealing with. So it's amazing to see the journey that where we're at right now, and especially with Trulieve.
Yes, thank you. Sara, you spent a lot of time in journalism, so you bring to the table some additional skill sets that other people in branding and marketing may not, because you were covering objectively and independently sort of the global industry. Explain to us how that helps you in your working now with one or a series of different companies with respect to your perspective of the industry.
Well, having a background in journalism, as you do as well, I'm sure you can relate. We've both suffered from hundreds, if not thousands, of god-awful pitches. So, you know, just getting woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning with my phone beeping with someone who has an urgent news release about CBD for cats. Things like that. So, you know, being on the receiving end of a lot of not so good ideas, it's able to help me educate my team as to how to shape better ideas that will get picked up by journalists.
Thank you. And for the two of you, it's wonderful to have two of the 22 license holders in Florida here to have a little bit of contrast. Walk us through a day in the life of a branding, marketing professional working for only one of the 22 licensees of the state. That's a very big responsibility. Let's talk about a little bit about the scope of your responsibilities and what is the result that your company wants to see at the end of the year from you?
Well, I think both of us can say a huge focus has been on the opening of dispensaries. So not as fast as Trulieve, but we are, we'll have 6 more opening before the end of the year.
How many do you have total?
We have 9
9
as
now.
of now, and yeah, we'll have 15 by the end of the year, and on track for at least 20.
And is that across the
2020.
street or specific areas?
Fortunately, by the end of into 2020, we'll be statewide more, so we'll be Tallahassee on down. So right now we're pretty much central, as Wellington is as far south as we are. We're opening in Deerfield Beach coming up. So a huge part of my daily job is making sure that as we're going to these new markets that our physicians in the area have been extremely educated on who we are as a brand. And sometimes physicians are educated by us because it's such a new emerging field for them. And then to introduce ourselves to the communities. You know, every day our message is going to physicians, to patients, and as team builders. So I think it's just kind of a thinking on our feet and you know, establishing ourselves in the new markets, and then working really hard to maintain the existing patient base that we have through discounts, promotions, and ongoing, you know, strong patient support.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, and Judy touched upon it. We're sometimes educating the physicians a little bit more because we have probably a greater knowledge base than they do at times. But with truly kind of the end of the day-to-day responsibilities or the end of the year scope is beyond just community engagement, physician engagement, education there. Underneath, we are also dealing with over 150 different product SKUs. So the packaging, the labels, the verbiage, the product inserts, all of those types of communications or information that is displayed out there is run through our shop. So as far as the marketing department at Trulieve. So, and tomorrow we open location number 38. So even sending out additional communications, so it's way beyond just the typical marketing of a brand. It's really touching those patients in the avenue that they want to be touched.
Thank you, thank you. Let's dive down a little bit on the micro level. Sara, let's start off with you on this question. I often, in many of my engagements, I put up a castle with a moat around it, and I talk about what's the most important thing in this photograph, and 99% of the people say the castle. And it takes a second for me to engage to explain, well, you don't have a castle unless you protect your castle. With the inability to have federal intellectual property protection for your company's brands and trademarks in many cases, can we talk a little bit about what are the things that you do to create a form of intellectual property to protect your brand and engage your consumer? Sara, let's start that off.
Sure. Well, first of all, we have patents and patents pending on all of our robotic technology. So that definitely helps. So that's where the IP begins. As far as the branding strategy, we make sure that everything we do across the board can apply in a more general arena. Like, for example, our Greenbox obviously is only in compliant states within dispensaries, but we have another Greenbox or a version of it that is in non-compliant states that carries CBD. And so those are kind of on deck and deployed across the nation, waiting for those states to come online and be compliant. We'll already have the infrastructure in place. So getting ahead of the curve is also really important. I know people tend to say that in cannabis, like 1 year is like dog years or 7 years, because the industry is moving so quickly and evolving so quickly. So the ability to get ahead of that is really important. And I think with IP, patenting things and, well, I guess it's different if you have a publicly, I work with two companies, one is publicly traded and one is private, so that completely also changes the playing field, because with a public-facing company, you have a lot more disclosures, whereas with a private-facing company, you really only have to answer to your investors, so you can do a lot more creatively and strategically. So I think, you can't necessarily, they say you can't copyright an idea, but you can copyright like the path to that idea with technology.
So I know we're lining up our ducks in a row, so as soon as we can patent everything, we will be there in that office to put forward those applications right now. So it's really just monitoring what is being said regarding our brand and trying to counteract that or remove certain items from other organizations that are trying to copy what we're doing.
And our chemists have a patent pending on our encapsulation technology. So because we are research and science driven, obviously that's the core of the products that we are trying to protect and create our unique space with. So I guess in the panel earlier they were talking about the data and how patients go to a lot of different dispensaries, and I think we're all very well aware of that, and that we all have things that are unique to us, and then we also know that our patients are shopping the prices too, and so they may go for that. But for us, we have patients that are totally loyal to us because we have this 72-hour patch, and that's unique and it's reliable, and they know it'll always be there when maybe some other things aren't. So it's important to protect, but it's also just, I think, more important to be known in the space as a consistent innovator.
Sure. Let's talk about, other than what's patentable, the consumer experience. You go into a dispensary, right? It's overwhelming for most people. It's fun, but it's overwhelming. And you're relying on somebody, oftentimes with a high school education, to give you medicine in many cases. What goes into your thought process for the actual box itself, or the package, or the colors, or the fonts, or the design and the graphics in creating a product that will provide a consumer experience and make them be drawn to the product that you have? Sara?
Well, having a background in graphic design and digital design definitely helps. But we actually our lead graphic designer, Caroline Murphy, is an absolute wizard. She was actually recently nominated for a Bud Tender Award for Master of Graphic Design.
Fantastic.
So I try not to step on her toes. I let her take the lead, and she has the uncanny ability to kind of distill a brand down to its essence and then see how it would look on a robot. And she's brilliant at that. I think what we're seeing in the branding space is a lot of sticking by a color. Like we have, the Candescent Orange, the Cookies Blue, so that seems to resonate with people. It's always easy to spot. As far as being in the dispensary, even though some of the bud tenders are quite young, they actually have extensive knowledge because they are trained intensely. Depending on the dispensary, I know, for example, Have a Heart, they kind of pop quiz their employees, and if they're not up to speed, they have to go back for retraining. So it's not that they're necessarily dispensing medical advice, but they know how to extrapolate a person's usage, their tolerance level, what ailments they might have. And that really is their job. They're the first line of defense at the dispensary. And if you're not happy with a particular bud tender, you're always welcome to try a new one. But they are pretty well trained. But as far as the Greenbox, our robots were created for the exact opposite. Like our customer is someone who already knows what they want, don't want to wait in line. They just want to go in, get it, get out in under 3 minutes. The way the technology works, it will also make suggestions that are compatible or might be applicable towards what they're already purchasing. If you're getting flour, you might want to get some paper to go with it, things like that. So it really helps a person get their order together. But as far as circling back to your branding question, I think that I think a lot of people in the cannabis industry got into this industry because they came from creative industries. So having any kind of creative background really helps in that space.
I think for us, we're restricted a great deal by the Department of Health on what our packaging can really look like. So we would all like to minimize it, and we would all love to be able to recycle everything. And our hands are tied in a lot of ways. So we work within the constraints that we have. But cannabis is, like I had said, confusing enough. So for us, it was really important to make our packaging really simple. So you look at our logo, you see what the product is and what it contains, if it's THC, if it's CBD, or if it's one-to-one. And we try to make the experience as painless for our patients, and I think our dispensaries reflect that too. Again, we have to have our windows covered so that no one from the outside can see in, because heaven forbid we influence somebody to buy our package. So
is that a Florida law?
It's a Florida law with the Department of Health. So I think that sometimes when people open the doors to our dispensaries, it's almost like, it's beautiful and it's not threatening. And so that's really been our job with our packaging and with our dispensary design. In our communication, we don't want to confuse. We want to be a resource for educating people on what would work best for them. And again, like you said, that first line, our we call them med tenders, they're extensively trained. And a lot of them are cannabis patients themselves, some aren't, but it's definitely we take it seriously that they're the people that are interacting with patients about medicine.
Great. David?
It's funny, the experience of they can't see inside our dispensaries because then they can't even see where the product's at because they're behind another set of double doors at ours. So it's creating that warm environment space for those patients, that it's not a scary place for you to come and get your medicine. As far as our packaging is concerned, truly we stand behind our simple white packaging with the various color schemes depending on the strains. But really the cannabis and the product sells itself, so we don't need to add any flair to that. So it's just simple verbiage on the simple packaging and provide the patients what they want. Through our bud tenders, we all deal with that constant education, all of us sitting up here. So it's a continual education cycle that we're constantly dealing with. And especially with over 3,000 employees at Trulieve, it's a daily struggle to constantly do that.
Let's think about one bad day in branding for each of you. Let's tell the audience a story of some experience you had with branding of a product or marketing that you learned from in moving forward in your career or your experience? Sara, you're smiling. You must have a few. Was it Pink Box before Greenbox?
No, I'm smiling because I want to tell a story, but I'm not sure if my good friend Alec over at Abacus would like it or not. But he let me tell it on stage at another conference, so I'm just going to run with it. Not my day particularly, but I have a colleague at Abacus, and it's an Israeli company, and Abba, I believe in Hebrew, means father.
Correct, sure.
And Kus means something that I'm not
It
going
does,
to
yeah.
say in this company. So I think with branding, a horrible day might be if you have what you think is a great name for a brand, and you maybe don't check it through translators in other languages, because if you're planning on going global, you want to make sure that your name doesn't mean anything offensive in other countries.
Absolutely.
That might have to cause a rapid rebrand or subsidiary.
For sure, yeah, along those lines, Jared Mirsky tells the story with one of his clients, Puff Delivery, when they wanted to go global, and of course, Puff in England means something much different with respect to sexual preferences, and they immediately had to pull back a very expensive media marketing campaign in that regard.
I would think it was, before Google and how easy it was to do searches.
Sure.
In a former career, we had taken something all the way through to just about to launch, only to realize that even though we had done our homework, the name was not available, and it was, pivot and rethink it through. But nowadays it's a lot easier to not get that deep into it. It's almost, but every good idea has definitely been shared in. It may not be in the same industry, but you think you've thought of something, and it's hard to keep it fresh. So that's, I think, why we stick with just telling the story as it is and not necessarily trying to entertain or wow.
That makes sense, David. You're smiling too. I want to hear a good one.
I'm going to take it from a different angle. A bad day would be considered maybe a patient that destroys your brand and tries to put negative comments out there. False information.
Just define destroy. We've all
So-
different levels of destruction in this business.
Individuals will be creative and create their own videos stating maybe a product had something in them, or communications were said between an organization and not.
Is that just
So-
haters or people who want to sue for some
It's
reason? Combination of
Not
both?
necessarily sue, not entirely sure what their motive is behind the scenes, but we've had individuals that create fake chats that look like from our organizations and all these various videos. And it's a fun, so those are the bad days, because you have to kind of, take a step back. Is this a legitimate concern? Or if it's not, then how do we actually try and take it down off the web or minimize that impact to change that narrative or story?
Great, thank you. As we move forward more into having more legalized state on the adult or rec side, now it's 11 states. We hope it's much more than that going forward. Branding is going to take on an even more important role going forward, and certainly when it happens, not if it happens, with federal legalization, when there are cross-border transactions like with every other product. Do you sit back and think about that now? Is there anything involved in your present organization where you think about the next 2 to 3 years, what you need to do to create a national presence or a national brand or an international brand for that matter? Sara?
Yes, actually that's something we've already struggled with and had to pivot from. In the early stages of Greenbox, we realized that some robotic retailers are not compliant in certain states because a person has to be present. Other people had the idea they wanted to put them outside of the dispensary as a drive-through so people could access them 24 hours. And then we realized that that's not necessarily compliant in certain states. So it's a constant ongoing battle of what is compliant where, and then just when you think you know the regs, like the regs change. And so, that is difficult under any circumstances, even if it's just a small t-shirt, but it's even more difficult when you're dealing with a 700-pound robot that has to be, recalled or moved. And that's actually why Greenbox spun out into the CBD option, because we realized we could put them in CBD compliant states, but then we learned we couldn't have them both in a dispensary, because in some places you can't have CBD being dispensed where THC is being dispensed. It has to be one or the other. So it's definitely been a constant, ongoing challenge, but that kind of led to co-branding them and having them deployed in music festivals, which is something we hadn't considered before, like putting them on a sprinter van and having them at South by Southwest and having them dispense CBD. So every kind of challenge and robot we face kind of like has made us, put our heads together and come up with a creative solution or workaround.
Those regulations, aren't they fun? Being in compliant in which state and where, or which county and where. So that's the constant challenge. So truly, we're now in 4 states nationally from coast to coast. So we're in that building block stage of what is our brand to look like. So here in the state of Florida, you can't do traditional advertising. Out in California, we've got billboards on the side of the highway. So it's really taking that kind of 30,000-foot elevation picture and what will fit in where within inside each state and those rules that they have. So
For us, when it took a little longer to get medical legalized in Florida, we went to Arizona and launched there. And again, regulations, we got some of our growing pains out there and brought it here, but I think we all know that rec is coming in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, in the back of our mind, we're prepared for that when it does happen. But day to day, it's about taking care of the patients that we have now, building out the dispensaries that we plan on opening now, and just making those excellent in all ways. And I think for all of us, having enough flour is,
is that such a thing?
Is the most important thing right now, whether we're medical or recreational. So it's keeping our patients happy no matter what. But yeah, we'll be ready when and if recreational happens and the laws change, and hopefully we'll be able to go into other states and do some joint ventures, and and hopefully we'll be doing edibles someday soon in our kitchens. And so we're ready. We have variances that are with the Department of Health, and as the state can keep up, then we'll be as ready as we can be. And if we've done something that we were sure would be great that wasn't, we will fail forward and find some way to make it a positive.
Thank you. What are a couple of things that keep a branding executive awake at night? Sara.
Everything. What keeps me awake at night? Not much, because an edible will put me right to sleep.
Well, before you take that edible, or actually the reason that you take the edible to help deal with the thing that keeps you awake at night, let's talk about a couple of those on the branding, marketing side, and your responsibilities involved in that.
Okay. Yeah, some of the things I tend to obsess over, and luckily Caroline, my partner in crime, and I have that shared platform, is how certain things will be perceived. They say, for example, like you can't please all the people all the time, and that's why we have such great brands in the space. Like you have Nug or Dr. Green Thumb, which is just like black and dark, and that appeals to a certain consumer. Then you have like the brighter, like bright blue cookies. So color is something that I obsess over a lot. As silly as that sounds, I wonder if the colors that I like are going to be the colors that everyone finds appealing, or if they're going to be colors that people are turned off by. So yeah, that's what I think about mostly.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Color is extraordinarily important portion of the branding experiences. But in Canada, you're limited, and almost all brands are focused on a particular color. Are there particular colors that you like or see with your brands that you'd like to move them in that direction?
Well, I think I read somewhere that hospitals are certain really pale muted colors because that's designed to keep patients really calm. And the more we learn about, color and how it affects like the mind and the personality, like that's something I definitely want to learn more about every day. Ultimately, there are certain products that I'd like to brand with a color to excite people. There are other brands I'd like to, use like a lighter color. I mean, when we went with Greenbox, it was pretty obviously green, cannabis. For a little while, we had a spin-off called Marina Box, which was marine blue, which was supposed to be our CBD brand. And then after a while, we just pulled it all back into Greenbox, so it would be like recognizable across all platforms. But yeah, I think about color a lot. I also think about texture. Some people are really tactile, some people are not. Sometimes I pick up packaging and it's got like that little rubbery sort of sheen to it. And you're like, ooh, I like
I wondered if that was just me. Steers.
I like that too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's like fun to pick up.
Yes, that whole experience.
David?
Yeah, so it's that whole experience. I would say kind of a lot of it does keep me up beyond just the color scheme. It's the orders, did we just approve, millions of pre-printed labels, and was everything correct on that? So luckily, it's not just a single sold decision. So multiple eyes prevents multiple errors. So that's the beauty of our team here at Trulieve is really it's no silos approach. It's we're all in this together. So everybody can provide that valuable feedback to make sure that we're not laying awake at night from that perspective. So
I think it's the patient that gets on the social media platform that probably keeps me up because I believe anything can be resolved, and I know our intentions of a company is to deliver safe, reliable, consistent medicine and do it in a friendly way. Sometimes something doesn't happen right for that person at that moment. So what keeps me up is the amount of damage that can be done in a short amount of time, and the energy it takes to get the truth out there and to disarm this person and everyone that they've shared it with when it was such a fixable situation. So I think, the things that are in my control, I obviously wish I wouldn't have procrastinated on the video that was due the next day and things like that will keep me up at night. However, I have control of that. It's the people out there that maybe don't think of the damage that they're doing, that they're just venting, and they'll move on in a minute, but they leave a lasting, perhaps negative impression, and that's the stuff that bothers me the most.
Sure, that makes sense. Sara?
Would you mind if I circle back to that?
Yeah, sure.
So, I will tell you one thing that actually does sort of make me stress is that what we're seeing in approach to branding in the cannabis space across the board is effects-based marketing. And effects-based marketing makes me nervous because no two people's body chemistry or brain chemistry is different.
It's a great point.
And, if I read something that's called sleep and it's designed to make me sleepy and it doesn't, I might be turned off from cannabis because I might not think it works for me. And I might be that disgruntled person who's writing, I tried this and it didn't work. So I think, in order, rather than treat cannabis as like this panacea where if I call this happy, it will make everyone happy, we should say, this was designed to make you happy, but if it doesn't, like, see your bud tender and get something alternative.
Yeah, great point. Again, with everything else, there's no generalization. Genes come in a lot of different sizes, right? And they're the same genes. Yeah.
So I would say to your point there is a lot of patients that do try it and they don't like that experience that they went through. So that's kind of why we stand behind our return policy. If something doesn't work, if it's not right, you just no questions asked, bring it back in.
That's
And people
fantastic. I've actually
exchange
never
that.
heard of a company that has that. Can we go a little bit deeper into that? Was that a company policy? Was that something that you suggested, and when was that implemented, and how has the effect been?
No, so that's been since the start with Trulieve, and it's all about that patient access. We grow one patient at a time, so we should provide them the medicine that they want and need. So, and all the devices, that viable option there. If something breaks, they shouldn't be stuck with, you know, a $100 device or something like that at home, because this is their medicine. So that's kind of why we stand behind that, and we don't see that going away, so, at all.
That's fantastic. It would be wonderful if that was a globally adopted policy. Let's take a real big step back, macro bird's eye view with respect to brands and their importance in the future. Let's talk a little bit more about the role that brands will play. Imagine a day when we see our very first Super Bowl commercial with a cannabis brand, which will be a very exciting thing to see.
Very soon.
Yeah, I believe it. It will be very soon. Will it be focused on all demographics, a particular demographic? Will it be just like beer? Why don't you start us off?
Well, I think branding has changed dramatically from even my generation to the younger generation now. My generation and older had a brand loyalty and had a belief that brand was going to take care of them, and that was a relationship. Well, it's really not the same anymore. That your brand is basically not necessarily how we're marketing it, it's the experience. And so now we're dealing with influencers and people asking their peers for recommendations. So yes, our branding is very important, but that reputation with your existing patients, I think, is the branding of the future for us, because that's how it seems things are going. Yes, we would all love to have that commercial and on the Super Bowl, and just to think that in order for that to happen, the stigma of cannabis has been lifted that much that now it is mainstream. So we're all going there, but influencers and recommendations among existing patients, I think, is kind of our branding model right now.
Sara?
I think that there are certain things that are universal, no matter like what your age or demographic, and I think pain relief is one of those things. So, you know, whether you're a teenager who wants relief after a sporting event, or whether you're an older person who wants relief from the day-to-day, I mean, we all struggle with pain relief, and I think, you know, topicals are something that are also universally appealing, because still to this day, even though we think the stigma is lifted because we work in this industry, I'm asked all the time, like, you know, if I put this CBD rub on my knees, am I going to get high? And I have to tell people no, that it's, you know, just, they'll treat you just like.
It would be really fun if you told me yes and then
Yes.
just watch to see if they become that way with the placebo effect. That would be really entertaining.
Yeah, so I think pain relief is universal, and you know how you package that. There's always going to be something for everybody. I like to say to people, there will never be a shortage of brands. I mean, for example, like you can use a $400 jar of La Mer, or you can use a $9 jar of Nivea, but if you look at the ingredients, they all contain petroleum and fragrance. Why would someone spend $400 on a $7 item? Because of the way it makes them feel, the luxury of feeling that they can afford something expensive. As crazy as that sounds, we are all guilty of that on some level. So I think there's always going to be enough brands out there to appeal to any demographic, but what those brands are peddling, I think, is universally appealing.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, our brand is definitely out there for every consumer, but it's the various products, like you were saying. Pain relief is kind of a universal symptom, but providing those products in various kind of routes or targeted towards certain consumers is kind of what we're after here, and providing those transparent, safe products we stand behind our third-party lab testing that's transparent out to the consumer. So tying that in with our brand is all about that patient kind of experience that you ladies were talking about there. So
I think looking to the future too, I would love to be able to peel away the film on all of the windows, and I would love to be able to not get Facebook shut down because I said THC and inferred that I was trying to influence people to buy it. So we'll be less restricted in how we tell our story and share our product information with all of those different segments once it becomes a little bit more acceptable.
Great, yeah.
And there is no course, there's no road, there's no roadmap anywhere, even with the legalization, Colorado back in the day, we're all still charting that course and to see what is going to be that top brand, like the Coca-Cola, like the Pepsi. There really is not one here in the cannabis space.
Sure.
But it kind of speaks to,
Sure,
I'm
Sam.
sorry, I just chime in here. I think it kind of speaks to how powerful our industry is, the fact that we've been able to get this far without any form of advertising. I mean, I don't think there's any other product in history that's had to deal with that, like a Coca-Cola.
There's a few movements, though, that we have to give a lot of credit for getting
really
things
do.
legalized, and
Absolutely.
those advocates and those people that wouldn't be quiet, those are the people that I really want to thank for getting us as far as we have. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, the anecdotal evidence is really powerful.
Without question. So for our final question, why don't we just take a sort of a broad sweep? Let's flash forward 5 years from now, or at a point of federal legalization. If you have a raw canvas and you could paint your wish list for the industry and for the consumers and patients, what would you wish for?
Oh, I would wish that insurance would cover medication and, recommend or see it as the same as pharmaceuticals. It's hard to explain to somebody who can get pills that, they may be addicted to but it's covered by their insurance and something that could help them get off of those addictive substances. So I would love to see that the insurance companies and that the medical community embrace medicine.
How long do you think that would take once the day federal legalization happens with the bureaucracies and insurance companies? Would that be another decade? Do you think it would move reasonably quickly because of insurance policies? Feel free to chime in.
Yeah. There's
We're all
so many
friends
things
here.
going through my mind right now
Yeah.
about the current healthcare issues that I sometimes can't believe we're still talking about, and how many people we're still not currently helping. So, we're forging as best we can to make that happen. And yeah, from a marketing standpoint, that would definitely be helpful to say, this is part of your health savings account, or see your doctor. But I believe that's a long way away.
Sara?
My wish is exactly the same as yours, because what a lot of people don't realize is that by keeping cannabis federally illegal, it's contributing to the systemic cycle of poverty. Because if you look at New York, for example, there are a lot of people on Medicaid and Medicare health insurance. And in order to qualify for that, you have to, as a married couple, you have to have a combined income of $1,300. So let that sink in for a second. Two people have to live on $1,300 a month. That has to pay for their housing, their transportation to anywhere. So that doesn't really leave much wiggle room for, a $400 a month sublingual tincture from a dispensary. Where are they going to find the money for that? They're not. What are they going to do? They're going to go to a street dealer. Now you're entering the criminal justice system if you get caught, and it just spirals outward from there. And if they had access to safe and reliable medicine from a licensed dispensary that was paid for by health insurance, they might recuperate faster. They might be able to re-enter the workforce and lift themselves up.
Great point. Thank you.
So wish list is, I don't think we have enough time here today to really answer that. But it would be, some of the restrictions that we're under is we are definitely held to a higher standard, which is great as we continue to move down kind of this course in uncharted waters. But to see some of the restrictions kind of go away, the stigmas really go away, and then we're now entering a different sphere. We're marketing a mainstream product that is acceptable everywhere and anywhere, and that would be kind of the wish list that I can see us having, because it is beyond just, yes, medicine here from a medicinal side of things, but once you're entering recreational states and all of that, it's more of a retail environment then. So that's kind of where we see fit of removing some of those restrictions to where it could be in the retail space.
Thank you very much. We have about 10 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, I want to thank David, Sara, and Judy for participating today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Englander with the firm Fowler White. And I have to first congratulate you, the panel here, as clearly the winner, as the most chill panel I have been to the past 2 days.
Is that a good or a bad thing?
I think it's a testimony.
Well, it was probably the Trulieve sativa we did.
That was it.
Well, it's a true testimonial. I'm an intellectual property specialist, so I tend to, you touched on something very near and dear my heart when you talked about the trademarks and the patents coming up. And I was wondering if you were also taking care of things like the software programs that you're working with, your digital assets, the design patents on your icons. There's so much that needs to be done to protect and to distinguish the different CBDs that are out there. I was just wondering if that was something, because just putting the word, even having cannabis as part of your name, as you all probably know, that's just something you can't protect for products that have cannabis in it. But I was wondering if you're continuing to develop your intellectual property and protect them as well. Thank you.
Well, so yeah, luckily we have a team of lawyers who are really spearheading that effort for that protection. So, and I know they do touch upon it's the software, like you're saying, the logo. I mean, all of those little avenues. It's really interesting to see what we can and cannot kind of trademark or patent. So I know that's a continual fight, especially as we're starting to see now more counterfeit items that are coming across from overseas. So that's going to be a whole different ballgame that we're going to be dealing with there.
And I have a tendency to want to just patent everything. And then I also talk to our attorneys and say, is this patentable? Has someone else already done this? So I'm very, very big into protecting intellectual property, because starting my career as a creative and having all of my photographs stolen, having all of my articles stolen, it just drove me up a wall. So I think when you create something, your natural instinct is to want to protect that. Unfortunately, it's hideously expensive. But that's just one of the things you have to do if you want to be in this business.
And I do rely on those lawyers. So if they tell me I can put the circle R or the trademark next to something, then I do it. That's where I mean, obviously we would love to make sure that all of our information is protected, but that's a little bit out of my expertise.
Thank you. Anybody else over here?
How do you counter and crush the illicit markets with branding and marketing? And is it just the price, or is there a room there to do a better job? Because from what I understand, past Florida, and because Florida is not recreational, I think once again it becomes recreational, will be even more so a thing. So is there like a process internally that you guys say, let's focus on educating against the illicit market, and the whole vaping thing that's happening now? I understand it also increased sales of vape outside of the illicit market because of that. People are kind of saying, well, if I get it on the street, then I might run into issues. So again, so branding,
I
marketing.
think that's it for us. How we crush it is by saying we do rigorous in-house testing, and then we send it out for third-party testing for things that aren't even required of us yet. And I don't even think that the outward community understands how much product we actually send out for testing. It's, you know, a significant amount because it's that important for us to have that transparency. So I think that the only way that we can really crush old habits is by saying to people, if you purchase reliable products through us, they're safer. We have testing to prove it. And if you have your medical card and you buy product legally, you won't get in trouble. So those are, you know, two.
But is it
ways that we
resonating? Are you
can-
reaching people with that message?
Pardon me?
Are you reaching people with that message? Is it resonating? Or
I
is it
think
just-
so. I
Yeah.
think so. And the scares in the news, you know, I would love to tell you that the way that they're reporting that is, you know, is safe for people to hear. Some of it is maybe, you know, misinformation being sent out. But the fact that there's any discussion in the outward community that's talking about safety, you know, our people come to us and want us to solve this problem, and we're very happy to be able to say, you know, you're safe if you stick with any of the dispensaries in the state of Florida. We're regulated, so you know,
See-
you don't take those chances in the black market.
I'm not going to have the popular opinion here with my esteemed colleagues, but speaking from a personal point of view and not as a representative of my company in this hat, I don't have any desire to crush anyone, let alone the illicit market, because the thing we have to remember is without the illicit market, none of us would be sitting on this stage making the money that we make. We are here because people who consumed cannabis illegally started a grassroots movement to make it normal and socially acceptable as a medicine. That's why we're all sitting here. Now, I do understand that some illicit market substances are not safe or may be contaminated or may be pirated. Obviously, nobody wants anyone to consume anything that would be dangerous. But the way we are going to make this market safe and reliable is by making it affordable to everyone and not by making it an elitist drug that only certain people can afford. Because as long as there are people who can afford cannabis, there will always be an illicit market because it is 75% less expensive to obtain.
So it's interesting, the illicit market. We're kind of on that forefront of, they're slowly now entering kind of our sphere, wrong products, you could say. So as we stand behind our transparency, every single product of Trulieve's has an item number, batch number. You can go onto a website and pull up that individualized lab report. When you communicate that to an individual that is buying an unknown product on the black market, it really, and then you enlighten them what could be inside their product. Everything from the mold inside the baggies, you know, or the metals inside the vape cartridges. So it's really just educating them, and then it's like, okay, it's an aha moment. It's like, why don't we actually now purchase from a reputable licensed dispensary that does provide that transparency? So we actually have seen a little bit of an uptick in individuals that are transferring over from the black market to the medical side in regards to vape, because they know they can now purchase a reliable vape and it's not going to have those harmful effects that they're seeing in the news right now.
Thank you guys. Anything else? One more up there? Okay, great, thank you.
You touched a little bit on the what keeps you up at night, the conflict management in terms of social media venting. How do you respond to the venting other than going into a inbox, I guess you'd say, in the public realm to defend your product, but at the same time not encroach upon the restrictions to advertising by making your product sound, you know, basically just promoting your brand again? How do you walk that fine line?
And we always try to, you know, direct message the person and you know, our call center that we started 6 months ago now has 25 people working in there. They're, you know, fielding sometimes 3,000 calls a week. So I think by having people standing by to reply is our best way to diffuse a lot of those situations. And, you know, being publicly willing to say, oh, that shouldn't have happened, that was a mistake, and this is how we'll rectify it. Or understanding, we're sorry that we can't resolve this, you know, we hope that in the future you'll give us another chance. And sometimes you just have to end it that way.
Yeah, and that's kind of just part of the transparency, is just apologizing if that's really the only message, or some messages you don't even actually respond to. So at Trulieve, we're doing 3,000 phone calls probably a day in our call center, and we have an entire team of probably about 15 individuals that are monitoring all social components for every single message. We have the largest Facebook cannabis page out there right now. So what does that engagement look like? How many responses are we doing? And those touch points. So like Judy said, it's taken that conversation from the main page to a direct messaging, because there you can then go into greater details and provide greater feedback to that patient and try and resolve their concern, if that's even possible, or what they're after. That's the other side of things. They may not actually be looking for a resolution. They're kind of bored at home and have no other thing to do, so they're online and just creating chaos.
Thank you. All right, one more question? Sure. Oh, yeah, let's try to squeeze them in. Sure.
So right now, being a medical program, I assume we're competing against pharmaceuticals. Moving forward, adult legalization in Florida and the states, responsible use. Do we represent a bigger threat to alcohol or tobacco industry?
I think that we're already seeing a lot of competition in the sense that the tobacco industry and the liquor industry are already trying to, you know, scoop that market. You know, they're coming up with cannabis-based beverages and hemp-smokable cigarettes, and it's already out there. It's already happening as far as competition.
They're pivoting. They're pivoting
Definitely
to our
pivoting,
space.
sure.
And as far as the pharmaceutical industry, not all pharmaceuticals are bad. And so, you know, we want to complement things that are working for patients and give them options. But, you know, we also recognize that, you know, obviously we're all against the crisis that has been created. But there are great medicines out there as well. And we're trying to create medicines that are cannabis-based and work in conjunction. But yeah, if it can get somebody off of drugs that have negatively altered their personality to, you know, keep them from having an epileptic seizure, and we can do that through a natural plant, then we'll go head to head, yes, definitely.
And what's the statistic we love? No one's ever died from overconsumption of cannabis like tobacco and the alcohol industry.
Sure. One more quick one. Sure. Thank you.
I promise I'll be quick. My question is just, I know you spend a lot of time obviously trying to navigate around regulations and navigate around, you know, having your windows covered and things like that. Are there moments you find where you're able to celebrate your brand, and, you know, are you finding positivity in ways that you, maybe either internal communications or other ways where you're able to celebrate, you know, your organization and who you are and kind of put that out there while also still following the regulations?
Well, last year we sponsored here in Miami Kaya Festival with the Marley family. So that was an incredible opportunity for us to be so free to talk about who we were. But what I never realized was that the Marley family was so about education. And so for us, we still got to be medical, but we were so able to talk about it. So we're now being invited to Chamber of Commerce events and, you know, young professional groups and things like that. So it's happening. Even if it's just curiosity, we'll bring you here because people are wondering what you have to say. I think we're being invited into a lot more spaces than we're being closed out of. We still have to be respectful of the DOH, but you know, just because there are so many great companies here in Florida, and we're all saying exactly the same thing, and we're united in that. Hopefully, we can get some of those changes made.
Yeah, that's the beauty, is we are in this together. While we may be competitors, but we're all pushing forward in this space. I will take it to the other extreme of celebrating the success. Tomorrow we open location number 38. So every time we open up another brick and mortar store, providing that increased access to patients, that's a celebration in itself. And then we held a contest regarding the best Truliever out there. A woman went down and she got a tattoo of our logo on her body. So that takes it to a whole nother level out there.
What happens when you rebrand?
Not anytime soon.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to move into regulatory compliance and tax landscape. Thank you.